Hello, it is wine time, and today I thought I would talk a little bit about how to store your wine. So, when you purchase wine, you want to think of it like until it is time for your wine to be served, it needs to rest. So, in order for your wine to rest and relax, it needs to be cool, it needs to be in a dark place, it needs to be still, and it needs to be lying down. So, it's resting or sleeping until it's time to go to work. And so that's how I think of it. It helps me remember. It's a good way to remember how to store your wine. So, first of all, temperature. So, you want to store your wine in a cool location. And so, ideally, it would be like historically, it's a cave. You know, people had wine cellars, wine caves. I don't have a cellar or a cave at my house. I don't know about you. So, if you don't have that, basements are really good places to store your wine. If your garage is cool or temperature controlled, you can store your wine there, or just in a room that is cooler. Ideally, basements are easy for people. Of course, if you have a wine fridge or a wine storage unit, that's fantastic. But in lieu of that, you just want to remember to try to keep your wine at a constant temperature. So even if it's not super cool, you want to keep it at a constant temperature. So you don't want it somewhere where it's heating up and cooling down and heating up and cooling down. The ideal temperature probably is somewhere between 50 and 60. About 55 degrees is ideal for storing wine. But if you can keep it somewhere between 50 and 60 and keep it sort of at a steady temperature, then your wine will last longer and stay nice. The other thing then is you want it to be somewhere dark. Now, it doesn't have to be in a pitch dark, but you don't want it to be where it gets a lot of light, UV light from even your light fixtures. And you definitely don't want it to be in direct sunlight. So, at all costs, keep your wine out of sunlight because the sunlight will heat it up and it will affect the flavors later on. So, it's just like the heat, the temperature, and the light kind of work together. So, cool and dark is ideal for your wine. Even if you have a closet you can store it in, or a cabinet where it's not sitting out too much in the light. If it is in your house, just make sure it's not in direct sunlight. If you have racks I have racks all over my house, but I try to keep them to where they're not getting a lot of light and definitely not a lot of sunlight. And then you want your bottles to be still. In other words, you don't want to be somewhere where your wine is getting vibrated or moved around a lot. So you don't want it up against some sort of like near a washing machine where it might get jiggled. Wine likes to be still. So a lot of people put it on top of your refrigerator, for example. That has some constant sort of vibrations. It's not best for your wine. So keep it in a location where it is still is good. And then finally, it needs to be lying down. Now, the reason you want your wine bottle, I'm going to show you some bottles here. You want your wine bottles to be lying down. And the main reason is because if you keep your wine in contact with the cork will not get dried out. When the cork gets too dry, so if you're like this, the wine is always touching the cork and the cork can stay moist. If you leave it upright and the cork happens to get dried out, then that's when air can get into your bottle. And when air gets into your wine, you're going to get oxidation. And so the best way for me to explain that is if you think of an apple. So when you slice an apple and then the air gets inside of it, it starts to turn brown. So something similar like that will happen to your wine. It oxidizes your wine and it messes up the flavors of your wine. Okay, the same with the sunlight. If you get too much sunlight, if you leave it in your hot car, for example, after you've been shopping, your wine can actually cook, and they call that being materized, and it will really, really affect the flavors of your wine. So you need to think about keep it cool, dark, still, and lying down. Now, if you have wine that happens to be, that doesn't happen to have a cork. So this particular wine, I don't know if you can see this, but this has a screw cap, and I'll put it up close. So you can see the ridges. You can see that this doesn't have anything but a screw cap that I can screw this off. So without a cork, this can be stored upright with no problem because I don't have to worry about the cork drying out. So in this case, you don't have to worry as much about the lying down. You can see that this one has a cork, and you can tell that because you've got this capsule sealing the cork inside there. There's no ridges for me to twist this off. Okay, and most of your wine racks are going to come to be in a lying down position. So this is like a basic wine rack. I really like this one's fun. It looks kind of like a group of grapes, a bunch of grapes. So this is a typical just little small wine rack that you might have in your house. And it's designed specifically so that your wine bottles then will be lying down. And so that is, achieves the goal of lying down and keeping it in touch with your cork. And this, if as long as you set this someplace stable and cool and out of the sunlight, this is fantastic. I have one of these in my kitchen, but it's underneath some cabinets, so you can still see it, but it doesn't get direct sunlight or a lot of light to it. So that's another suggestion. So that's just a little bit about how to store your wine, and I thought I would share that with you today. So just a slight little wine education. So it is wine time, and it's time to enjoy. Cheers.